The morning sun shone through the windows of Westview High School as students rushed to their first classes. The hallways buzzed with teenage energy, laughter, locker doors slamming, and friends calling out to each other. Among them was Marcus Johnson, a 15-year-old sophomore with dark brown eyes and shoulder-length dreadlocks that he had grown with pride for the past 3 years. Marcus hurried along the polished floor, checking his watch. He was running late again. His bus had been delayed by traffic, and now he faced being tardy to Ms. Miller's art class for the third time this week. He quickened his pace, his backpack bouncing against his back. Ms. Karen Miller stood at the front of her classroom, taking attendance with precision. At 45 years old, she had been teaching art at Westview for 15 years. She wore her blonde hair in a tight bun and dressed in pressed khaki pants and a blue button-up shirt. Her glasses hung on a chain around her neck, and she tapped her foot as she checked her watch. "Alyssa Garcia?" she called out. "Here," a girl in the front row responded. "Peter Harris?" "Present." When she reached Marcus Johnson's name, she paused and looked up. His seat remained empty. Karen's lips tightened into a thin line. This was becoming a pattern, and Karen Miller did not appreciate patterns of disrespect. 5 minutes into the lesson on color theory, the door creaked open. Marcus slipped in, trying to be quiet, but all eyes turned to him. His dreadlocks were tied back neatly, and he wore a plain green t-shirt with jeans. "Mr. Johnson," Karen said loudly, putting down her chalk. "Late again, I see." Marcus lowered his eyes. "Sorry, Ms. Miller, the bus was—" "I don't want to hear excuses," she cut him off. "Take your seat, we'll discuss this after class." The other students looked away, some with sympathy for Marcus, others glad they weren't the ones in trouble. Marcus slid into his seat beside his friend Jamal and took out his sketchbook. "Dude, she's on the warpath today," Jamal whispered. "Watch yourself." Throughout the class, Karen kept glancing at Marcus. Something about him bothered her. She had always prided herself on running a tight ship. Rules were rules. Structure was important. And this boy, with his casual attitude toward punctuality and his wild hair that didn't conform to what she considered proper, represented everything she fought against. When the bell rang, Karen called out over the shuffle of students packing up their supplies. "Marcus Johnson, please stay behind." Marcus exchanged a worried look with Jamal, who patted him on the shoulder before leaving. Soon the classroom was empty except for Marcus and Ms. Miller. "This is the third time this week you've been late to my class," Karen said, standing over Marcus's desk. "Do you think your time is more valuable than everyone else's?" "No, ma'am," Marcus replied quietly. "It's just that my bus—" "If the bus is unreliable, then you need to catch an earlier one," Karen interrupted. "But I suspect this is more about attitude than transportation." Marcus looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" Karen circled his desk, her eyes moving to his hair. "Your whole appearance speaks of a lack of discipline, Marcus. Those dreadlocks, for instance. They're unprofessional and distracting." Marcus's hand instinctively went to his hair. His dreadlocks were his pride, a connection to his heritage that his father had encouraged him to explore. "There's nothing wrong with my hair," he said, a touch of defiance in his voice. "Lots of students have different hairstyles." Karen's face hardened. "I've noticed your grades slipping too. Perhaps if you focused more on your studies and less on your appearance, you'd be doing better." The truth was that Marcus maintained a B average despite balancing school with helping care for his younger sister while his parents worked. His father had recently accepted a position as the new principal of Westview High and would be starting next week. The family had moved to the district 3 months ago, and Marcus was still adjusting. "I work hard, Ms. Miller," Marcus said. "My grades are fine." "They could be better," Karen replied. She made a sudden decision. "I want you to come back during lunch period. We're going to address this issue once and for all." Marcus frowned. "What issue?" "Your lack of respect for authority and proper presentation," she said. "Be here at 12:30 sharp. Don't be late this time." Throughout his next classes, Marcus couldn't focus. What did Ms. Miller mean? Would she give him detention? Call his parents? He texted his mother during a break between classes. "Ms. Miller wants to see me at lunch. I think I'm in trouble for being late." His mother, Lisa Johnson, replied quickly, "Try to explain about the bus. If there's a problem, tell her to call me. Dad's in meetings all day preparing for his new position." At 12:30, Marcus knocked on the art room door. Karen opened it quickly and ushered him in, closing the door behind him. The classroom was empty, the lights dimmed except for the area around Karen's desk. "Sit down," she instructed, pointing to a chair she had placed in the center of the room. Marcus hesitated but did as he was told. "Am I getting detention?" Karen stood behind him. "No, Marcus, this is more immediate than detention." She opened her desk drawer and pulled out something that made a soft, buzzing sound when she switched it on. Marcus turned and his eyes widened. Ms. Miller held electric hair clippers in her hand. "What are you doing?" he asked, starting to rise from the chair. Karen placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Sit down. The school handbook clearly states that students must maintain appropriate appearance. Your hair is not appropriate for a serious learning environment." "That's not true," Marcus protested, his heart racing. "There's nothing in the handbook about dreadlocks. My dad read it carefully before we moved here." "I'm the teacher here," Karen said, her voice cold. "I decide what's appropriate in my classroom." Before Marcus could stand up again, Karen switched on the clippers and brought them to the back of his head. The buzzing grew louder as she made the first cut, sending a clump of Marcus's dreadlocks falling to the floor. "Stop!" Marcus cried out, reaching up to protect his hair, but Karen pushed his hand away. "This is for your own good," she said as she continued cutting. "You'll thank me later when colleges and employers take you seriously." Tears formed in Marcus's eyes as he felt more of his dreadlocks fall away. He was in shock, unable to believe this was happening. The hair he had grown for 3 years, the hair his father had helped him learn to care for, was piling up on the classroom floor. "Please stop," he begged, his voice breaking. But Karen continued until most of Marcus's hair was gone, leaving only an uneven, patchy cut close to his scalp. She finally switched off the clippers and stepped back to examine her work. "There," she said with satisfaction. "Now you look like a serious student." Marcus reached up and felt his head, his fingers finding unfamiliar shortness where his dreadlocks had been. Tears streamed down his face. "You had no right," he whispered. Karen ignored him as she swept his hair into a trash bin. "Clean yourself up and get to your next class. And don't be late to my class again." Marcus stumbled out of the room in a daze. The hallway was still full of students enjoying their lunch break. Conversations stopped as people noticed his shaved head. Some gasped, others pointed. A few pulled out their phones to take pictures. "Hey, what happened to your hair?" a girl asked as Marcus rushed past. He didn't answer. He locked himself in a bathroom stall and called his mother, his hands shaking so badly he could barely hold the phone. "Mom?" he sobbed when she answered. "Ms. Miller cut off all my hair. She cut off my dreadlocks." There was silence on the other end of the line, then his mother's voice tight with controlled fury. "She did what? Stay where you are. I'm coming to get you right now." As Marcus waited, he thought about his father, Eric Johnson, who would soon be the principal of this very school. His father, who had worn dreadlocks himself when he was younger, and had taught Marcus about their cultural significance. His father, who had always told him to be proud of who he was and where he came from. Ms. Miller had no idea what she had just done, and she had no idea who Marcus's father was. But she would find out, very soon. The news about what happened to Marcus Johnson spread through Westview High School like wildfire. By the time Lisa Johnson's car pulled into the school parking lot, at least 50 students had shared photos of Marcus's shaved head on social media. Comments ranged from shocked to angry, with many students tagging their parents and local news stations. Lisa Johnson sat in her car for a moment, taking deep breaths to calm herself. At 42, she worked as a nurse at the local hospital and had seen many difficult situations, but nothing had prepared her for this call from her son. She grabbed her purse and walked quickly into the school building, her face set with determination. At the front desk, she didn't bother with pleasantries. "I need to see my son, Marcus Johnson, immediately, and then I need to speak with the principal." The secretary, Mrs. Patel, looked up with concern. Mrs. Johnson, what seems to be the problem? A teacher cut off my son's hair without permission, Lisa said, her voice shaking slightly. His dreadlocks, all of them, gone. Mrs. Patel's eyes widened. Let me call Marcus to the office right away. The current principal, Mrs. Taylor, is in a meeting with your husband right now, actually. Lisa nodded. Call them both. This can't wait. While Mrs. Patel made the calls, Lisa paced the small waiting area. A few minutes later, Marcus appeared in the doorway, his eyes red from crying. The sight of his unevenly shaved head made Lisa gasp. She rushed to him and pulled him into a tight hug. Oh, baby, she whispered, touching his head gently. What did she do to you? Marcus broke down again in his mother's arms. She said my hair wasn't appropriate, that I wouldn't be taken seriously. She just started cutting, Mom. I couldn't stop. Her. Lisa held her son at arm's length, looking into his eyes. Listen to me. There was nothing wrong with your hair. Nothing. What she did was wrong and against the law. Do you understand? This is not your fault. Marcus nodded, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. The office door opened and Deborah Taylor, the outgoing principal, walked in with Eric Johnson. Eric, tall and distinguished in his gray suit, froze when he saw his son. Marcus, he said, his voice barely audible. What happened to your hair? Before Marcus could answer, Lisa spoke. Karen Miller happened. She cut off his dreadlocks during lunch period, without our permission, without any right. Eric's face transformed from shock to fury. He knelt in front of his son, examining the choppy remains of the dreadlocks he had helped Marcus grow and care for over the past 3 years. Who is Karen Miller? He asked, his voice dangerously quiet. She's the art teacher, Deborah Taylor answered, looking horrified. She's been with the school for 15 years. Not anymore, Eric said, standing up. I want her in your office. Now. While they waited for Karen Miller to be called to the principal's office, Eric took photos of Marcus's head from different angles. Lisa helped Marcus put on a baseball cap he kept in his backpack, offering him a small measure of comfort and privacy. We should take him to a proper barber, Lisa said softly to Eric. To even it out at least. Eric nodded, his jaw tight. After we deal with this situation. Karen Miller entered the office 20 minutes later, looking annoyed at being pulled from her class. When she saw Marcus with his parents and the principal, she straightened her back, preparing to defend her actions. Ms. Miller, Principal Taylor began. These are Marcus's parents, Lisa and Eric Johnson. Mr. Johnson is also, as you may know, the incoming principal, who will be replacing me next week. The color drained from Karen's face as she looked at Eric. Johnson, the man who would be her boss in just a few days, was staring at her with cold anger in his eyes. I didn't know, she stammered. Would it have mattered? Eric asked. Would you have cut off another student's hair without permission if their father wasn't about to become your boss? Karen shifted uncomfortably. I was simply enforcing school policy about appropriate appearance. Stop, Eric interrupted, holding up his hand. There is no such policy at this school. I've read the handbook cover to cover, and there is nothing that gives teachers the right to physically alter a student's appearance. Principal Taylor nodded in agreement. Ms. Miller, if you had concerns about a student's appearance, the proper procedure would be to speak with me or contact the parents. His hair was a distraction, Karen insisted, though her voice wavered. And he was consistently late to my class. So you assaulted him? Lisa asked incredulously. You cut off hair that has deep cultural significance without his consent or ours? Do you understand what you've done? Karen looked at Marcus, who refused to meet her eyes. I was trying to help him. In the real world, appearances matter. I was teaching him a valuable lesson. Eric took a step toward Karen, his voice low and controlled. The lesson my son learned today is that people in authority can abuse their power, that his body and culture are not respected. That's the lesson you taught, Ms. Miller. Karen began to realize the seriousness of her situation. She had acted impulsively, thinking she was helping a student who needed discipline. Now she stood before his parents, one of whom would soon be her superior, and understood that she had made a terrible mistake. I may have overstepped, she admitted. Overstepped? Lisa repeated. You committed assault. You traumatized our son. Overstepped doesn't begin to cover it. Principal Taylor cleared her throat. Ms. Miller, I'm placing you on administrative leave effective immediately, pending a full investigation. Please gather your personal items and leave the campus. We'll be in touch about next steps. Karen's mouth opened in shock. Administrative leave? But I have classes to teach. Projects due. This is excessive for what was simply... It wasn't simply anything, Eric interrupted. And administrative leave is just the beginning. We will be filing a formal complaint with the school board and considering legal action. Karen looked desperately at Principal Taylor, hoping for support, but found none. Deborah, we've worked together for 15 years. You know I'm a good teacher. A good teacher doesn't do what you did today, Principal Taylor replied quietly. Please follow my instructions and leave the campus now. I'll have a substitute cover your classes for the remainder of the day. As Karen left the office, her shoulders slumped in defeat, Eric turned his attention back to Marcus. Son, do you want to go home for the rest of the day? Marcus nodded, still overwhelmed by everything that had happened. I'll take him, Lisa said. You finish your transition meetings, but tonight we need to talk about next steps. Eric agreed, giving Marcus a long hug before they parted. I'm so sorry this happened to you, he whispered. We're going to make it right. On the drive home, Marcus sat quietly in the passenger seat, occasionally reaching up to touch his head through the baseball cap. Lisa glanced at him with concern. Do you want to talk about it? She asked gently. Marcus shook his head, then changed his mind. Why would she do that, Mom? What's wrong with my hair? Lisa gripped the steering wheel tighter. Nothing is wrong with your hair, Marcus. Nothing. What's wrong is how some people think they have the right to control others, especially when those others look different from them. Dad's going to fire her, isn't he? Marcus asked. That's not entirely up to your father, Lisa explained. There's a process for these things. The school board will be involved, but yes, I believe Ms. Miller will face serious consequences for what she did. When they arrived home, Lisa called their family barber, Mr. Duane, who agreed to come to their house right away. While they waited, Lisa made Marcus his favorite sandwich and sat with him in the kitchen. You know, she said, trying to comfort him. Hair grows back. I know it's not the same, and it will take time, but you can grow your dreadlocks again if you want to. Marcus nodded, but his eyes filled with tears. 3 years, Mom. It took 3 years, and all my friends saw me like this. The pictures are everywhere online. Lisa pulled out her phone and showed him something. Look at what's happening. Your friends are supporting you. On social media, students from Westview High were posting messages with the hashtag #JustIceForMarcus. Many were sharing stories of their own experiences with discrimination at school. Some were even pledging to shave their own heads in solidarity. People care, Lisa told him. What happened to you was wrong, and they know it. When Mr. Duane arrived, he assessed the damage to Marcus's hair with professional calm, though his eyes showed his anger. I can even this out for you, he said, setting up his equipment in the Johnsons' bathroom. It'll be short, but it'll be neat, and I'll show you how to take care of it while it grows back. As Mr. Duane worked, Marcus began to feel a little better. The support from his friends, his parents' immediate response, and now the care from Mr. Duane helped him see that while what Ms. Miller did was wrong, he wasn't alone. Meanwhile, back at the school, Eric Johnson sat in what would soon be his office, making phone calls, first to the superintendent, then to the school board president, and finally to a lawyer friend who specialized in civil rights cases. By the end of the day, Karen Miller would learn that cutting off a student's hair wasn't just a mistake. It was an act with serious legal and professional consequences. Karen Miller sat alone in her living room, staring at her silent phone. It had been 24 hours since she was escorted from Westview High School and told to wait for further instructions. She had called the teachers' union representative, who had sounded grim after hearing her story. Now she waited, jumping every time a car drove past her house, wondering if it was a news van or angry parents. She turned on the local news and immediately regretted it. There she was, her school photo displayed next to a headline, "Teacher cut student's hair without permission. Sparks outrage." The news anchor spoke in a serious tone. Westview High School teacher Karen Miller has been placed on administrative leave after allegedly cutting off a black student's dreadlocks without permission. The student, whose name is being withheld due to his age, is the son of the school's incoming principal, Eric Johnson. The incident has sparked protests outside the school today. Karen turned off the TV, her hands shaking. She had never meant for this to happen. In her mind, she had been helping Marcus, teaching him about proper appearance and respect for rules. Now she was being painted as a villain, and her 15-year teaching career hung in the balance. Her phone rang, startling. It was the school board president, William Boyd. "Karen," he said, his voice formal and cold. "We've scheduled an emergency board meeting for tomorrow at 4 p.m. to discuss your actions. You have the right to attend and speak on your own behalf. I strongly suggest you bring representation." Karen swallowed hard. "Bill, you know me. I've been teaching at Westview for 15 years. This is being blown out of proportion." "Karen," William replied, "there are photos of that boy's head all over social media. His hair was cut without his or his parents' permission. This isn't a minor issue that can be swept under the rug. The superintendent has received over 200 emails from parents and community members since yesterday afternoon." After the call ended, Karen sat in stunned silence. 200 emails in less than a day. She had never considered that her actions would cause such an uproar. It had seemed so simple in the moment, a teacher correcting a student's behavior. Now it was being called assault, discrimination, and abuse of power. Meanwhile, at the Johnson home, Marcus sat at the dinner table with his parents. Mr. Duane had done his best to even out the rough cut Karen had given him, but Marcus's head was now shaved close to the scalp, a far cry from the dreadlocks he had worn proudly for years. "I don't want to go back to school tomorrow," Marcus said, pushing his food around his plate. "Everyone will stare at me." Eric put his fork down and looked at his son. "I understand, Marcus, but I also don't want you to hide. What Ms. Miller did was wrong. You have nothing to be ashamed of." Lisa reached across the table and took Marcus's hand. "Your father's right. But it's also okay to take another day if you need it. This has been traumatic for you." Marcus considered his options. Staying home meant delaying the inevitable. Going back meant facing stares and questions, but also standing up for himself. "If I go back," he said slowly, "I want to do something. I want to speak up about what happened, not just for me, but for other kids too." Eric nodded with pride. "That's a brave decision, son, and I think it's the right one. As the new principal, I need to address this with the whole school anyway. Perhaps we can do it together." The next morning, Marcus returned to school with his father. As they walked from the parking lot to the main entrance, students stopped to watch. Some called out words of support. Others just stared. Marcus kept his head high, though inside his stomach churned with anxiety. In the main office, Deborah Taylor welcomed them with concern in her eyes. "Marcus, it's good to see you back. How are you feeling?" "I'm okay," Marcus replied, though his voice was quiet. "We'd like to address the school during morning announcements," Eric explained. "This situation affects everyone, and I think it's important to be transparent about how we're handling it." Principal Taylor agreed. "I think that's wise. The students are talking about it anyway. Better they hear the facts from you than rumors from each other." At 8:15, the morning announcements began as usual with the Pledge of Allegiance and daily notices. Then Principal Taylor's voice came over the intercom. "Students and staff, I have a special announcement today. As many of you know, an incident occurred yesterday that has affected our school community. I'm going to invite our incoming principal, Mr. Johnson, to speak to you all about it." In classrooms throughout the building, students and teachers fell silent as Eric's voice filled the rooms. "Good morning, Westview High. I'm Eric Johnson, and I'll be your new principal starting next week. Many of you already know that my son, Marcus, is a sophomore here. Yesterday, a teacher cut off Marcus's dreadlocks without his permission or ours. This action was wrong on many levels. It violated school policy, personal boundaries, and showed disrespect for cultural expression. In her classroom, substitute teacher Mrs. Rivera watched her students exchange glances. Many nodded in agreement with Eric's words. The teacher involved has been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation, Eric continued. But I want to address something more important than punishment. I want to talk about respect. Marcus stood beside his father in the main office, listening as his dad spoke to the entire school. Respect means acknowledging that we all come from different backgrounds. We have different hair, different clothes, different beliefs. That diversity is what makes our community strong. No one should ever be made to feel that their cultural expression is wrong or unprofessional. Eric paused, looking at his son. Now I'd like to let Marcus say a few words. Marcus stepped up to the microphone, his heart pounding. He had practiced what he wanted to say, but now that the moment was here, he felt nervous. Then he remembered the feeling of the clippers against his head, the helplessness, and found his voice. Hi everyone, it's Marcus Johnson. By now you've probably seen the pictures of what happened to me yesterday. Ms. Miller cut off my dreadlocks because she said they were unprofessional and distracting. My dreadlocks were important to me. They connected me to my culture and my identity. Having them cut off without my permission hurt more than just my appearance. It hurt my spirit. In the teacher's lounge, several staff members listened with tears in their eyes. They had worked with Karen Miller for years, but none of them could defend what she had done. But I'm not going to hide, Marcus continued, his voice growing stronger. I'm going to stand up and speak out. What happened to me has happened to other students too. Maybe not in the same way, but in ways that made them feel small or wrong for being who they are. That has to stop. We all deserve respect. Across town, Karen Miller listened to the school announcements through the online portal for teachers. Each word from Eric and Marcus felt like a blow. She had never considered how Marcus felt. She had only thought about her own standards, her own ideas of what was proper and professional. Now she was hearing the pain she had caused, and it made her question everything she had believed about her role as a teacher. The school board meeting that afternoon was packed. Parents, teachers, students, and community members filled every seat in the district conference room. News cameras lined the back wall. Karen sat at a table facing the board members, her union representative beside her. William Boyd called the meeting to order. We're here today to address a serious incident that occurred at Westview High School. Before we begin, I want to emphasize that this board is committed to creating safe, respectful environments for all students. Eric and Lisa Johnson sat in the front row with Marcus between them. They had filed a formal complaint, which William read aloud. It detailed the incident, cited school policies that had been violated, and requested Karen's termination. When it was Karen's turn to speak, she stood on shaky legs. She had planned to defend herself, to explain her reasoning about discipline and standards. But looking at Marcus's shaved head in the audience, she found she couldn't say any of those things. I made a terrible mistake, she said instead, her voice barely audible. I thought I was upholding standards, but I was imposing my own biases. I didn't consider Marcus's feelings or his cultural identity. I didn't think about the message my actions would send. I'm deeply sorry for the pain I've caused. The room remained silent as Karen sat down. Her apology seemed sincere, but for many in the room, it wasn't enough. The damage had been done. After an hour of testimony from other teachers, parents, and students, the board went into closed session to deliberate. Karen waited in a small side room, preparing herself for the worst. When they called her back in, William Boyd's face was solemn. Ms. Miller, after careful consideration of the facts, the board has voted to terminate your employment with Westview School District, effective immediately. Your actions constituted assault on a student and showed serious lack of judgment. Karen nodded, tears in her eyes. She had expected this outcome, but hearing the words still hurt. 15 years of teaching ended in a moment of misguided authority. As she gathered her things to leave, she passed the Johnson family in the hallway. She stopped, wanting to apologize directly, but the words stuck in her throat. Marcus looked at her. not with anger but with a sadness beyond his years. "I hope you learn from this, Ms. Miller," he said quietly. J. A week after the school board meeting, Eric Johnson officially began his role as principal of Westview High School. His first day was different than he had imagined when he accepted the position months ago. Instead of focusing on his educational vision for the school, he was dealing with the aftermath of what had happened to his son. News vans still parked outside the school each morning. Reporters called his office asking for interviews. Parents sent emails expressing support or concern. Some community members questioned whether Eric could be fair and objective as principal after what had happened to Marcus. Eric sat at his new desk, reviewing the messages that had flooded in. His assistant, Mrs. Patel, knocked on his door. "Mr. Johnson, there's someone here to see you," she said. "A Mr. Lewis from the Civil Rights Education Group." Eric looked up from his computer. "Send him in, please." Raymond Lewis was a tall man, with gray hair at his temples and a serious expression. He shook Eric's hand firmly before sitting down. "Thank you for meeting with me, Principal Johnson. I know you're busy, especially now." Eric nodded. "What can I do for you, Mr. Lewis?" "I represent the Civil Rights Education Group. We work to address discrimination in schools across the state. What happened to your son has, unfortunately, happened to other students too. Not always cutting hair, but other forms of cultural erasure and discrimination." Eric leaned forward, interested. "Go on." "We believe your school has an opportunity here," Raymond explained. "Instead of just firing one teacher and moving on, you could implement real changes that protect all students. New policies, training, programs, awareness campaigns. Turn this negative event into something positive for the future." Eric thought about Raymond's words. He had been so focused on helping Marcus and dealing with Karen Miller that he hadn't fully considered the bigger picture. This wasn't just about his son. It was about creating a school where all students felt respected and safe. "I appreciate your perspective, Mr. Lewis," Eric said. "I'd like to hear more about what your organization suggests." Meanwhile, at the Johnson home, Marcus sat in his bedroom with his friends Jamal and Zoe. His hair was starting to grow back, a short fuzz, covering his scalp. He still felt self-conscious about it, but the constant support from his friends had helped. "My dad says the school board is reviewing all the dress code policies," Marcus told them. "They're going to make sure nothing like this happens again." Zoe nodded, her long braids moving with the motion. "That's good, but it's not just about policies, it's about how people think. Ms. Miller didn't cut your hair because of a policy. She did it because she thought your dreadlocks weren't professional or appropriate." "Zoe's right," Jamal added. "We need to change how people think, not just what the rules say." Marcus considered his friend's words. "What if we did something, like started a student group or something?" Zoe's eyes lit up. "We could call it Cultural Respect Alliance. We could have meetings where people share about their cultural practices and traditions. And we could create posters about different hairstyles and their cultural significance," Jamal suggested. "Put them up all over school." Marcus felt excited for the first time since the incident. "Let's do it. I'll talk to my dad about it tonight." Across town, Karen Miller was cleaning out her apartment. After losing her job, she had decided to move back to her hometown in another state. The constant stares and whispers when she went to the grocery store or gas station had become too much to bear. As she packed her books into boxes, her phone rang. It was Sandra Williams, another art teacher who had been her friend for years. "Karen," Sandra said when she answered. "How are you doing?" "As well as can be expected," Karen replied, her voice tired. "Just packing up. I'm moving back to Ohio next week." Sandra sighed. "I wish things had turned out differently. I still can't believe you did that." Karen paused her packing. "I've had a lot of time to think about it. I was so sure I was right, that I was helping him. I never stopped to question my own assumptions about what was professional or appropriate. I never thought about why I believed dreadlocks were somehow less acceptable than other hairstyles. Have you considered apologizing to Marcus and his family? A real apology, I mean." Karen had thought about it many times. "I tried to at the board meeting, but it felt hollow. Like I was just sorry I got caught. I need to really understand what I did before I can truly apologize. After hanging up, Karen noticed an email on her laptop. It was from a diversity education consultant offering a series of online workshops about cultural awareness for educators. Karen had automatically deleted similar emails in the past, considering them unnecessary. This time, she clicked on the link and registered for the next available session. Back at Westview High, Eric met with his administrative team to discuss Raymond Lewis's suggestions. "I think we should start with a review of all our policies," Eric said. "Dress code, discipline procedures, everything. We need to make sure they're fair and culturally inclusive." Assistant Principal Sam Bennett nodded. "I agree. And we should involve students in the process. They're the ones most affected by these policies. My son and his friends are actually interested in starting a Cultural Respect Alliance," Eric told them. "Maybe we could connect that with our policy review." Guidance counselor Michelle Rodriguez added, "We should also consider training for all staff. Not just a one-time workshop, but ongoing education about cultural sensitivity and implicit bias." As they discussed these ideas, there was a knock at the door. It was Deborah Taylor, the former principal. "Sorry to interrupt," she said. "I just wanted to drop off some files I forgot to leave last week." Eric invited her to join the meeting. "We're discussing changes we want to make in response to what happened with Marcus. I'd value your input as someone who knows this school well." Deborah sat down, looking uncomfortable. "To be honest, Eric, I feel partly responsible for what happened. Karen Miller had shown signs of rigidity and cultural insensitivity before. I should have addressed it earlier." "What kind of signs?" Eric asked. "Comments about students' clothing or hairstyles. Stricter enforcement of rules for certain students. Nothing as extreme as what she did to Marcus, but looking back, the pattern was there." The room fell silent as everyone considered Deborah's words. How many small instances of bias had they all witnessed or even participated in without recognizing them? How many times had they stayed silent when they should have spoken up? "That's exactly why we need to make changes," Eric said finally. "Not just to prevent another dramatic incident, but to address the small daily moments of bias that create the environment where something like this can happen." The next day, Marcus stood nervously outside the classroom where the first meeting of the Cultural Respect Alliance would be held. He and his friends had put up flyers and made announcements, but he wasn't sure if anyone would come. "What if it's just us three?" he asked Jamal and Zoe as they waited. "Then we'll start with 3, Zoe said confidently. Rome wasn't built in a day. To their surprise, students began arriving in groups of 2 and 3. By the time they were ready to start, more than 20 students filled the classroom. They came from different grades, different backgrounds, different social groups. Some Marcus knew well, others he had never spoken to before. "Thanks for coming," Marcus said, his voice shaking slightly as he addressed the group. "I started this club because of what happened to me, but it's not just about me. It's about making sure everyone feels respected and valued for who they are." A senior girl raised her hand. "I came because when I was a freshman, a teacher told me my box braids looked unprofessional during a presentation. It made me feel terrible, but I never told anyone. When I heard what happened to you, I realized I should have spoken up." One by one, students shared similar stories. A boy who was told his Spanish accent was too thick. A girl who was asked to remove her hijab for a school photo. A student who was mocked for bringing traditional food for lunch. As Marcus listened, he realized that what had happened to him, while extreme, was part of a larger pattern. By speaking up, he had given others permission to share their experiences, too. Together, perhaps they could create the change needed to make Westview High truly welcoming for everyone. At the end of the meeting, the students agreed on their first project. A photo exhibit called "Our Hair, Our Culture, Our Pride," featuring students with different hairstyles and short descriptions of their cultural significance. Principal Johnson had already approved the use of the main hallway for display. As the students left, chatting excitedly about their plans, Marcus felt a sense of purpose he hadn't experienced before. What Ms. Miller had done was still painful, but from that pain had come something positive. His voice and the voices of others like him would finally be heard. 6 months had passed since the day Karen Miller cut off Marcus Johnson's dreadlocks. The hallways of Westview High School looked different now. Colorful posters celebrating cultural diversity decorated the walls. The Our Hair, Our Culture, Our Pride photo exhibit had become a permanent display in the main corridor. Students walked with a new confidence, many proudly wearing hairstyles that reflected their heritage. Marcus's hair had grown back considerably. He had decided to grow dreadlocks again, and the new growth was about 2 inches long. Every morning, as he styled his hair, he remembered the lessons of the past months, both painful and empowering. Principal Eric Johnson had made significant changes to the school. Working with Raymond Lewis from the Civil Rights Education Group, he had revised the school's policies to ensure they respected cultural differences. All teachers and staff had completed cultural sensitivity training, not just once, but as an ongoing program. Most importantly, students now had a voice in school decisions through a diverse student advisory council. On this particular morning, Eric sat in his office reviewing the latest school climate survey results. The data showed a marked improvement in how students felt about belonging and respect at Westview. There was still work to do, but they were moving in the right direction. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. It was Mrs. Patel. "Mr. Johnson, you have a visitor. It's Karen Miller." Eric looked up in surprise. He hadn't heard from Karen since the school board meeting 6 months ago. He had heard through colleagues that she had moved back to Ohio. "Send her in, please," he said, curious about why she had returned. Karen Miller looked different than Eric remembered. Her typically rigid posture seemed more relaxed, and she had let her hair grow out from its usual tight bun. She carried a small package wrapped in brown paper. "Thank you for seeing me," Karen said, standing awkwardly by the door. "I wasn't sure if you would." Eric gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Please, sit down. What brings you back to Westview?" Karen sat, placing the package on her lap. "I've spent the last 6 months really thinking about what I did. I've been working with a cultural awareness educator and attending workshops about implicit bias. I've done a lot of soul searching." Eric nodded, but remained silent, waiting for her to continue. "I'm not here to ask for my job back," Karen clarified. "I know that's not possible, and honestly, I needed this wake-up call. I'm here because I owe your son a genuine apology. Not the rushed words I said at the board meeting, but a real acknowledgement of the harm I caused." "Marcus is in class right now," Eric said, checking his watch. "But I can ask him if he's willing to speak with you during lunch period." Karen nodded. "I'd appreciate that. If he doesn't want to see me, I understand. I've written him a letter as well." She indicated the package in her lap. Eric sent a message to Marcus's teacher, asking if Marcus could come to the office. While they waited, he asked Karen about her life since leaving Westview. "I'm not teaching right now," she explained. "I'm taking courses in education equity and cultural studies. I want to understand how to be a truly inclusive educator before I return to the classroom, if I ever do." A few minutes later, Marcus appeared at the office door. He stopped short when he saw Karen, his hand automatically going to his growing hair. "Hi, Ms. Miller," he said cautiously. Karen stood up, clearly emotional at seeing him. "Hello, Marcus. Thank you for agreeing to talk to me. Your hair is growing back nicely." Marcus entered the room and sat in the chair next to his father's desk, keeping some distance between himself and his former teacher. "Ms. Miller wanted to speak with you," Eric explained to his son. "But it's entirely your choice. You don't have to if you don't want to." Marcus looked at Karen thoughtfully. "It's okay. I'll listen." Karen took a deep breath. "Marcus, I want to apologize to you for what I did. I violated your trust, your personal boundaries, and your cultural identity. There is no excuse for my actions. At the time, I thought I was upholding standards, but I've come to understand that those standards were really just my own biases about what was professional or appropriate." Marcus listened without interrupting, his expression serious beyond his years. "I didn't consider what your dreadlocks meant to you," Karen continued. "I didn't think about the connection to your heritage or your personal identity. I imposed my views on you in a harmful and traumatic way. For that, I am truly sorry." She handed him the package. This is for you. It's a book about the cultural history of dreadlocks across different societies. I've been reading it as part of my own education. I thought you might appreciate it. Marcus accepted the package but didn't open it. Thank you for apologizing. It means something that you came back to do it in person. Has what happened changed how you see yourself? Karen asked quietly. Marcus considered the question. At first it made me feel ashamed and angry, but then I realized I had nothing to be ashamed of. Starting the Cultural Respect Alliance helped me see that I could turn something bad into something good. Karen smiled sadly. I've heard about your group. It sounds like you've made positive changes here. We've tried, Marcus said. Students talk more openly now about their experiences. Teachers listen better. He paused. What happened to me was wrong, but it woke people up. In the hallway outside, the bell rang, signaling the start of lunch period. Marcus stood up. I should go. My friends will be waiting for me. Of course, Karen said. Thank you for hearing me out. After Marcus left, Karen turned back to Eric. You've raised an incredible young man. He has more wisdom and grace than many adults I know, including the person I was 6 months ago. Eric nodded with pride. He's taught me a lot through all of this, too. We're hosting a community forum next month about cultural respect in schools. You'd be welcome to attend if you're interested. I'd like that, Karen said. Thank you. That afternoon, the Cultural Respect Alliance held its weekly meeting. The group had grown to over 50 students from all backgrounds. They gathered in the school library, which had been rearranged with chairs in a circle to encourage equal participation. Marcus shared his encounter with Karen Miller. She came back to apologize. A real apology, not just words. Zoe, who had been by Marcus's side from the beginning, asked, "How did it make you feel?" "Better than I expected," Marcus admitted. "She's actually learning from what happened. She gave me a book about the history of dreadlocks." "Do you forgive her?" Jamal asked. Marcus thought carefully before answering. "I think I'm starting to. Not because what she did was okay, but because holding on to anger doesn't help me move forward." The group then turned to planning their next project, a cultural awareness day where students would share food, music, art, and stories from their various backgrounds. Principal Johnson had approved making it a school-wide event, replacing the regular class schedule for a day. After the meeting, Marcus walked home with Zoe and Jamal. The spring air was warm and trees were budding with new leaves. "You know what's weird?" Marcus said as they walked. "If Ms. Miller hadn't cut my hair that day, none of this would have happened. No Cultural Respect Alliance, no policy changes, no Cultural Awareness Day." "That doesn't make what she did right," Zoe pointed out. "No, it doesn't," Marcus agreed. "But it shows that sometimes good things can come from bad situations if you choose to make them happen." At home that evening, Marcus showed his parents the book Karen had given him. As they looked through it together, Lisa noticed a note tucked inside the front cover. "She wrote you a message," she said, handing the note to Marcus. The note read, "Marcus, I will never fully understand the pain I caused you, but I am committed to learning and growing from my mistake. Your courage in speaking up has changed not just Westview High, but my life as well. Thank you for showing me what true strength looks like. With sincere apology and admiration, Karen Miller." Marcus placed the note back in the book. 6 months ago, he couldn't have imagined feeling anything but anger toward the teacher who had violated his trust and identity. Now, he felt something more complicated. Not forgiveness exactly, but a recognition that people could change, that education could overcome ignorance, and that his own voice had power. 1 year later, Marcus stood on the stage in the Westview High School auditorium, his dreadlocks now reaching past his ears. Behind him stood the members of the Cultural Respect Alliance, which had grown to include students from several schools in the district. "When we started this journey," Marcus told the audience of students, parents, and educators, "it was because of a painful incident that happened to me. But it's grown into something much bigger than one person's experience." In the audience, Eric and Lisa Johnson watched with pride. Beside them sat Raymond Lewis from the Civil Rights Education Group, who had helped guide their efforts, and in the back row quietly observing was Karen Miller, who had returned to contribute to the conference on cultural respect in education. The most important lesson I've learned, Marcus continued, is that speaking up can change things. One voice can start a conversation. One action can start a movement. And education can transform even the deepest biases into understanding. As the audience applauded, Marcus looked out at the faces before him, diverse in color, age, and background, but united in purpose.